Hey, how you doing? Welcome to another time here. Welcome to another time at the book club. Thanks for coming. We got to do this on Sunday afternoons, 2 p.m. West African time, and we'll pretty much read through a book and try to do life through the book. And we've presently been looking at our night book on the series, The Confidence Game. That's what we've been looking at for a few weeks now. And we're presently in chapter 4. We've been trying to get through chapter 4 for some time. You know, as part of chapter 4, we spoke about negotiation. And right now we're talking about persuasion, how to get someone on your side. With negotiation is how to reach a common position. With persuasion is pretty much convincing people, getting to what we'll call the end of communication. The intent of communication is action, right? The intent of communication is to make people to be able to see the way you see, feel the way you feel, and take an action. And that's what persuasion is. Persuasion is pretty much the heart of communication in such a way that you get to the end of communication, because the end of communication is action, and that's what persuasion is. It's pretty much helping people to see your position, getting people to your position. There is the ethical part, there is the unethical part. The unethical part is what the con man does or the con woman does. It's a con game, where it is done in such a way that it is not mutually beneficial. Someone is trying to get something from you. Someone is trying to steal from you. Someone is trying to con you to swindle you, right? But there's the ethical part. Ethical part is just everyday communication, getting your point across. That's what persuasion is, and that's what we've been looking at, as part of chapter 4. Chapter 4 talks about the rope, which is a part of a con game, in which you pretty much are roping, you're tying, your audience or your victim or your target to the game, and like we've said, all through this read through the book, and it is focused on the con game itself, but when we're using the con game and expanding outwards, it's like Maya Angelou says that every principle, can work in reverse. A principle that is meant for evil, there's a reverse of it, you can use it for good, because it's all talking about the human nature, it's using a tendency of the human nature. You can use a tendency of the human nature in a way that you exploit it. Now you can also use it in everyday engagement, where it is mutually beneficial, you know. And everything we're talking about with a can game here is what the marketer uses, what the salesman uses, right? Because the con game is just a sales game. It's a sales game, right? It's a marketing game. The only thing about it is that it's not mutually beneficial, but so there is a mutual beneficial one that you can use in your everyday engagement of life, everyday living in the marketplace, in the workplace, in the church, at home, with your children, with your spouse, so there is that differentiation, right? We don't get to carry it away in one angle, but we can learn from that angle and use it in every area of our life. That's what we're trying to get across. So it's a kind game. We're in chapter 4 of it, and we've been using 3 other books, like we've been saying, that's been helping us along. We're reading the book, 3 other books. But in chapter 4 here, we've read one book on negotiation, getting more. Right now to this second part talking about persuasion, we have 3 books that are helping us along, with the aspect of persuasion. And those are the Art of Persuasion, by Bob Buck. But most of it really we've been using the psychology of persuasion by Robert Cialdini. So that's been the main one we've been using to talk about persuasion. powerful book used by popular amongst marketers. Powerful book, And lastly, as we close the chapter, we're talking about decisions. So we do have this book, Decision Architecture, by Rebecca Meijlink, the spiral, So we'll see how at the end of the chapter, we'll talk about how people make decisions. So we'll see how much we can get out of this as we close the chapter. But those are the books we're looking at as we run through chapter 4 of our book. I'm going to bring up my slide like I always do, and uh we'll take today's section, which will pretty much be talking about two of the 7 principles of persuasion as put together by Robert Cialdini. He talks about 7 psychological principles, of persuasion. We're going to take 2 today, 2 next week, and we'll finish up with the last 3. Um, we'll finish up with the last, And if I look at the book, uh, I use the words yeah, I'm correct. There's 7 of them. We're going to take 2 today, 2 next week, and we'll finish up with the last 3 on the last time here. So today we're going to be looking at I'm going to bring up my slide. Don't let me steal the thunder. Let me bring up my slide. We'll be looking at reciprocity, and commitment. Um, All right, so that's my slide. Again, it's chapter 4, which is the rope convincing the mark. That's where we're in. Chapter 5 talks about the tail, which is the final cell. So we've talked about all of these last week. Um, Last week we said that there are 4 ingredients in every communication of persuasion. Is the communicator, the message to be communicated, how the message is being communicated, and the target or the audience of the communication. Those are 4 important aspects or units or elements of communication, and you have to address all 4 well, for communication to have taken place or for you to be able to persuade, your audience. All 4 are important, right? So most of what we're talking about here is how the message is communicated. That's what we see from us 7 principles that we're looking at, of communication. The communicator is us, the people to be communicated to. But in talking about the principles of persuasion here, we're focused on the how, right? That's what we're looking at, right? So we looked at all of these last time, and we talked about Aristotle's proposition on the things that make up for a good message or ability to persuade people or move people. And he says that it must contain really in his original writing he wrote about 3, and the other 2 are pretty much additions to that. It must be logical. It must be something that people can reason about. It must be able to touch their emotion. It must also be something that has a character, a form, to it. It is credible. It has an authority base, to the message, because people are looking for a reference, so it has a reference that's solid. So the first one is logos. It must be able to have an evidence, a reasoning to it, a logical part to what you're sharing. You know, um, so then pathos is it must be able to touch people's emotion. It must be able to hit them emotionally. You must be able to move them to feel, right? And 3 its ethos. It must be credible. It must have it must be anchored on a truth that the people are used to, and for its carols, whatever you're saying must be relevant to the season and time of the people. Otherwise, there'll be a disconnect. And the last one is a metaphor, which is pretty much using analogy, being able to sell your message by using a picture of what the people are used to, so they can then relate with what they already know. They are trying to do, they can connect from with what you're trying to sell with what they already know. Then it becomes more relevant to them. They're able to comprehend and accept it. And that's that word, a perception that we came up with. People will easily link up with something they can tie an experience of their life to, right? So, and that's just the way the brain works, right? Anytime we see something, our brain quickly goes back and say, hey, what's the reference point? Have I seen this before? Based on my life history, based on my storage, based on the things in my memory, how does this thing interpret? What is this? What is the action that's expected of me, by as a result of that? And we then make a decision based on the reference in our memory, and then we'll decide to how to respond to that thing, and so that's the word, a perception, being able to tie what we see now to what we've seen before, right? So so we talked about the seven psychological principles of persuasion, and pretty much this is a how you get the persuasion, and it's based on the human nature. It is a study of our human nature, the things we respond to, and so it's a thing that we respond to based on our programming. It talks about how to program us to respond, because we respond in definite ways, and the things that needs to be done to get us to respond in those definite ways. Those are just the seven principles. Like I say, when we talk about natural laws and principles, these are not things that were formulated by anybody. These are just what people have observed and studied, to be. It's not something that was created by a human being. It's just the way God has created the human nature to respond. So this has been noted, by observation, right? Just the same way with gravity, nobody created gravity. It was just someone saw apple fall down from the tree. He didn't stay up there, he fell down. Oh, there's something called gravity that makes things to fall down when they are not held up. So it's a natural law. It's just the way we're built, and people have observed it, and it's true. And we'll look at each of them. Today we're going to talk about the first and the second one, and next week we'll come back and talk about the third and the fourth one. And we'll finish up the other week then, talking about the fifth, sixth, and seventh one. But today let's focus on one and two, you know, and so it's called reciprocity. And reciprocity is just it's just someone doing to you like you have done to them, right? It's that we feel a sense of commitment to return a favor that has been done to us. It's sowing and reaping. It's just a law of life. God says, for as long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest time shall never cease. If you sow, you reap. If you give, you get. It's just like for we Christians, Luke 6, is it 38 or 38 thereabout, says that, give and it shall be given. 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 When we give, we set up a principle, we'll set up a emotion, the process of receiving because we have given. It's a law. It's a law and it works every time. Once you give, you set up a law emotion to receive back. So we'll see it in human nature that when you give someone something, that person feels obligated to give you something back. So in persuasion, if you communicate in such a way that that person receives something, that person feels a sense of commitment, obligation to give you something back, right? So that's what reciprocity is give and you shall receive. So the principle of reciprocity is a social norm, you know, and psychological phenomenon where individuals feel obligated to return favors, gifts, or kindness received from others. Because they have received, they feel obligated to give it back. It is a fundamental, deeply rooted human tendency to respond to positive actions with positive actions, fostering cooperation, trust, mutual benefit in social business and international relations. For a long time, I used to wonder why, when all of these 419 people call me, why I don't just respond, in a rough, abusive way. That would save my time. We'll just cut it off. I used to wonder why I feel obligated, or struggle, with talking to them roughly. And with this, I begin to understand that, because when they call you, they don't talk to you roughly. They talk to you like they have your best interest at heart. The way they come to you obligates you, as it were, to respond to them in like manner. They're going to greet you with respect. That same respect they give to you kind of obligates you to respect them back. Even though you know where they are going, it's not your natural response to shut them off at that point in time, because they did not come to you in an uncivil manner. They came to you with civility, so that kind of tunes your human nature to return that civility to them. You see, and they know it's a game. They already know where they are going, and they know that their civility in approaching you will arouse a civility in responding to them back. Right? Maybe that's just the way the Satan also walked with Eve. Came to Eve and said, as the Lord said. You know, I say, that discussion should not even have taken place, should have been cut off. But then you also see it from a reciprocity standpoint. Devil did not just come and attack Eve. He came like a friend. And his first talk was not harsh. It was as God said, or what did God say? Right? He came almost like a friend, and he, as it were, the normal response of civility is to return civility for civility, right? In a sense, we know better, right? Because of all that we read, and we can, you know, as it were, influence that normal response to shut down the conversation, because we know where it is going, right? But the normal response, human nature, is to return civility for civility, right? And that's what this principle is all about. And the devil knows it. The devil's not going to come and give you poison. All right, I want you to do this. It's going to come like a friend. It's going to talk to you, you know, um, in a nature that will evoke in you to not just cut him off, but to return back the same civility, right? And to return the same civility. That's why, scripture will say that, we should be sober, be sober, be sober. Be sober, be well collected. Be sober means don't let there be noise on your inside. Because if there's noise on your inside, you will not be able to hear the noise on the outside, right? But sober, be vigilant. You cannot be vigilant if you are not sober. Because if you're not sober, that you have distractions in your life. You have excesses in your life that are making noise, that are blocking you from being able to see, right? from being able to see, So the Bible says, be sober. First of all, get the peace within, shut off the noise in your own life so that you can then be vigilant. You can see the things that are outside of you, but sober. Shut off the noise on the inside, then be vigilant, so you can see and hear the noise on the outside. Why? Because you have an enemy. That enemy is not going to come like an enemy. The Bible says that the devil goeth about like a roaring lion. You know, he disguises himself like an angel of light. He's not going to come to you as a devil. It's going to be as if he's on your side, and it's going to come with you with civility. So, which will arouse in you a response of civility, only to take you to something that is not in your interest. So we need to be careful. Not every friendly talk, friendly call, is a friend. You need to be able to see see through seeming disguises, of civility, to know what the person is about and where the person is going, because yeah, we'll feel forced to respond, and be nice to people because they are nice to us, and that's the way it's supposed to be. It's just that not everybody that starts like that, means well for us, so it's good to be to wise up, and know when you're going off the mark. So reciprocity, is was well used, in marketing, you know. So we do that in relationship. First of all, we say a healthy relationship is one in which people come in, you know, because of what they can give, not what they can get, right? It's reciprocity. You have to give to get, right? So the reason for coming must be because you want to give, because your giving creates or creates the environment for receiving. So a healthy relationship is the one in which people come because of what they can give, not what they can get. However, what keeps that relationship together is what people get, not what they give. But to be able to get, you must give. The reason for coming together must be to give, not to get, because your giving starts the process of receiving. If all you do is to come and receive, then you're gonna get the other person will feel used, right? But when you give, you set up a natural response to give back, right? Rather than demanding from that person. Demanding is not natural. When you give, it opens a tap, for that person to give back to you, right? So and that's what we see in relationship, right? We see it also in what we'll call to banter. That's the way trade used to take place before money was created, right? People do give what they have to get what they don't have. You know, Obviously the con person wants to give less than he receives, right? So that's a negative side to looking at that. There's also what we call where people make concessions, right? And so it could be a gift. It could also be concessions, right? If you make concessions for someone, you automatically create an environment where that person, feels obligated to make concessions for you, and it could be natural, it could be intentional, it could be designed, right? People create environments where they need to make concessions for people, and the other person then feels obligated, to make concessions. We talk about some shops that do sales, and you don't know if it's sales or not. You don't know how much they are taking the price up before they are bringing it down. To the outsider, it's a sales, but someone that knows the price, the new price might be the price that's the actual price. Let's say they brought it from this to this. Question is, what was the old price, right? But you seeing it as a concession of a sales, you might think you have a good deal. You know, you feel it's a good deal, but whether it's a deal or not, but that opens the natural response of you think of wanting to buy it, right? And so there is a technical door in the face where someone um, gives you a concession and you then feel obligated to give a concession in return, right? So reciprocity works when the strongest blockade, it's comfort, so if typically it will take you some effort to do something, once someone gives you something that takes you over that barrier, that hurdle, because it opens or tunes in, that natural response of you wanting to do something for that person. So the comfort, you've gone past the inertia or want you to do something. And that's what I just said about relationship, right? You feel obligated to do something for someone if that person does something for you. But if that person has not done anything for you, then there's a struggle. Why should I do it? Does he deserve it? But when that person has done something for you, it gives that sense that you hold that person something, right? So, and it's best when you give without expectation, right? And that makes the person freer to give. If you give with expectation, that person sees it as an obligation, right? That there's no reciprocity in that, right? So that pretty much is reciprocity, it's just that ability to turn on our natural response to want to return a favor for a favor, a gift for a gift, a concession for a concession. Is that place where the Bible talks about give and it shall be given to you. Once someone gives us something, we have that natural inclination to want to give the person something in return, and we, yeah. All right, so that's our first principle of persuasion, persuading people by giving them something, first of all. And I don't know, I go for these timeshare meters, and when you come there, they give you offers. Every one of them, first of all, they give these several offers, and people, which they hopefully think that will make the people that bring the feel obligated to sign the contract to buy the timeshare. For some, it's staying at the resort. I've had to do that. Stay at several resorts. You stay in the resort, and they try to sell you a timeshare. They could just be that they give you a free ticket to a show, and by that ticket, they are hoping that will make you want to buy something from them because of what they have given to you, right? But you have to be careful, as to, not allow yourself to just be carried away by the emotion, and uh, be careful that you're not tying yourself to something uh, that has a long-term consequence just because you're getting a short-term gain, right? It needs to be something of equal benefit. That's what bantering is, right? You're exchanging value for value. A con game will try to give you something and request something much more from you. That's someone swindling you. In an ethical persuasion, it's equal value for value, right? In reciprocity. All right, I'm going to jump on to the next one, which is called commitment and commitment and consistency, right? And it's just a way similar to reciprocity, but in this wise now, it's someone is trying to not necessarily give you something of equal value as a reciprocity, but make you get committed by giving you a taste of the thing that they're trying to sell to you. They give you a small piece of it, get you committed to that small piece, and they're hoping that when you get committed to the small piece, you want more, right? So it's they start small, go big, and it's what we call a in my trade we'll call it a pilot test. You pilot it, right? Instead of someone needing to uh, overcome a big inertia to make a decision, you can make that commitment smaller. If they can commit to a smaller version of it, the trick is that hopefully if they commit to a smaller version of it, they'll feel it'll be easier for them to commit to a larger one, right? So it's piloting a big thing that you want to do, right? So we are hoping that if they are committed to the small, it'll be easier for them to stay consistent and be committed, to something bigger. It also looks at our need, or wanting or desire to be consistent. So you're hoping that if they can if they can start it, they will want to keep it going. And a part of it is when you go to a car dealer and they allow you to test drive, they're hoping that if you have a feel of a car, you would want to keep the car, right? So it's that giving you a small taste of it, and you feel committed to stay with it, right? So the quote that goes with that says, I am today what I established yesterday or some previous day. And it's just talking about that once you form a habit, you stay with the habit, So is also trying to commit to some action, and then you don't mind staying with that action, right? So the principle of commitment and consistency states that people have a strong psychological desire to be and appear consistent with their previous actions, beliefs, and statements. So if you can get them to take an action, you tell them to get them to believe in something, make a statement, they tend to want to, stay consistent with it. Our identity determines our action. Our action reinforces our identity. So if someone can take an action that identifies him with something and is something he likes, he would want to take more action to stay consistent with that. So once a person makes a small public or active commitment, they are significantly more likely to follow through and comply with a larger related request to avoid cognitive dissonance, right? So something inside of us just wants to be consistent. If I do this, I want to do things, that in line with the identity I see of myself, and that's part of why we a commitment. So we are built in such a way that we want everything in our life to be consistent. When what you're one thing you're doing is not in agreement with the other thing, it's what we call cognitive dissonance. Our nature is such that we want to be consistent, and this principle pretty much hangs on to that. That if you can get someone to do something, he wants to do other things in such a way that it looks consistent to that, right? So inconsistency is commonly thought to be an undesirable personality trait. Nobody wants to be inconsistent, with what they do. So it's not a desirable personality trait. We all tend to want to be consistent. So if you can tune the thing you want to get the person to do in such a way that it makes the person consistent, you are most likely to get that person to do the thing that you want the person to do, right? So the person whose beliefs, words, and deeds don't match is seen as confused, two-faced, and even mentally sick. And none of us wants to be like that. And the scripture would say that a double-minded person is unstable in all his ways. A double-minded person is unstable in all his ways. Can put it, an inconsistent person is unstable in all his ways. So when you're stable, you tend to want to be consistent. That is a drive of our human nature, right? So this persuasion tactics or principle is to flow in that direction. You know, uh, get our nature, to get whatever it is that want to persuade people to flow in line with what the human nature would go in line with, right? So a high degree of consistency is normally associated with personal and intellectual strength, So if you can get someone to make a commitment, they tend to want to stay with that commitment, right? And that, well, yeah, it is the heart of it is a heart of logic, rationality, stability, and honesty, right? Being consistent, it's the heart of logic, rationality, stability, and honesty. And for some people, that's how they get into relationship. They make a commitment, and they stay. They want and that's what marriage is about, right? If you're not married, you can always break a relationship. But marriage is a place of commitment, we'll say for better, for worse, meaning that irrespective of the obstacles thereafter, we're going to fight it together, right? So when we get into the commitment of marriage, we tend to want to be consistent with that. But if there's nothing binding us together, it can always break. And unfortunately, in today's world, divorce is prevalent because people don't understand, the importance of commitment. So in some of the techniques around commitment and consistency include foot in the door technique. You can get someone's foot in the door, they tend to want to be consistent with it. If you can get someone to test drive a car, they tend to want to keep the car. If you can get someone to um well, I don't know if they go about in shops and give you a taste. They give you a small bit, of what they're selling. Once you do a free trial, and some of the seminars that people do, they give free trials, to sell the big one. And it's like for some people, once they've tasted a small uh um makeshift presentation, they want to go for the bigger presentation. The smaller one is free, but once people have had the introduction and selling of the bigger one, they are able to commit to the bigger one because they've been a part of a smaller one. So different marketing schemes that people do to, it's a bigger sell for someone to make a big decision. So you pilot it, you make it small, and when people commit to the smaller one, it's easier for them to commit to the bigger one, right? So, and that's what the foot in the door. You give them a foot in the door, and they want to come in. There's a low ball strategy. You allow someone to come in at a smaller rate, smaller commitment, and once they've tasted it, they're easy for them to go big on it. Another way is making public commitments. People are more liable to keep commitments that they make in public than the one they make in private, because they feel that, oh, all right, I have to live up to my word. I have to live up to my public show. So that's part of using this principle. That's part of the benefit of baptism. People have shown to the world publicly, this is the line I want to go through. Becomes you feel a sense of commitment, drive, to stay, in the thing that you have already committed yourself to. So commitment and consistency works when the pain is already felt, but the step feels too big, So it's so taking a small step make it easier to stay with it. So small commitments lower the threshold and build momentum. They also trigger a self-perception shift. I am someone who does this. Once you can do the small one and know yourself as someone who does this, then it becomes easier to make decisions along that direction. As it were, it's cutting a new neural pathway for yourself. It's probably it's most difficult to start the cutting, but once you start cutting, it's easier to go along that path. It's like water, water path. Water will go the path of least resistance. When it meets an obstacle, it continues to eat that obstacle and go the path of least resistance. But over time, it's cutting new paths, and it's only in little bits. And as it cuts that little bit, it becomes easier to go that path, and that's what commitment and consistency is. It's taking a small commitment that you then stay consistent with, and it's easier to go that path. Mm. So you have to be beware of agreeing to trivial requests because that agreement can influence your self-concept and enslave you to bigger requests in a bit of inclination to be consistent, So be careful what you commit to. It's like people coming to borrow money and say, hey, whatever you have, and easy to go to put little money somewhere. But question is, how does that go in the big scheme of your budget, right? It's easy to put small thing hard up to the big thing, and that might get you off your mark, It's just be careful. Just be careful that you don't go off your plan or your budget just because of the small thing that leads to a big thing. Every time you make a choice, you're turning the central part of you, right? The part that chooses into something a little different from what it was before. Nothing is small. Once you make a decision, you are becoming that thing or become the person that makes that decision. It might look like a little decision, but you're identifying with the choice you have made. A little decision made today makes it easy to make a big decision tomorrow. Question, that big decision, is that the identity you want of yourself? Does it work for your long-term plan? Right? That's important. And lastly, once you've got a person's image where you want it, that person should comply naturally with a whole range of requests aligned with this new self-view. That's what the principle is. If you can get someone to make a small decision, it becomes easy for that person to make a big decision in that wise. And for con people, that's what they want you to do. It's easy to make one small decision, you know, because they make it look as it's inconsequential, but uh they either don't make you read the tiny print, or you just don't see too far. And for me, I've seen that in buying timeshares. I bought timeshares. It looked like, I mean, the first one I bought was out in Las Vegas. Uh, it was a Marriott property. So I say, hey, Marriott, I stay in a lot of Marriott hotel, so this shouldn't be bad. I stayed not too far away from Las Vegas. I felt, oh, I could always come out here, every now and then and use it. It was about 4 hours or 3 hours away from where I stayed then. Uh, so I felt we could use it, and I felt it wasn't going to be a burden. But we didn't go back for a long while. For some people, maybe it worked, but we're not the holiday type that every now and then just go out on holiday. So I was buying something that did not suit my lifestyle. It worked. It might have worked for a lot of people because maybe they go on holiday all the time, but we didn't have that culture where we just get up and go on holiday. So it was a good sales presentation. Maybe it was a good thing. It was a good thing for some people. It wasn't a good thing for us, right? We were trying to, we were trying to buy into another person's lifestyle, and it didn't work for us. It was a waste of money. It was a drain, So that was something to learn from. Again, we bought into one while we lived in Houston, and it was in Conroe, which was about an hour's drive away from where we lived. And I felt, all right, we stay here in Houston. This is in Conroe. Every now and then we could take time off and go to it. Again, it wasn't what we were. It worked for other people, not for us, because it wasn't our lifestyle to just carry ourselves, and go on holiday like that. So you need to know yourself. So what works for everybody might not necessarily work for you. Might be a good product. It works for everybody. Question, does it work with you? Is that who you are? Is that your identity? And that helps. Otherwise, you're gonna be putting your money, where you shouldn't. Not necessarily because the product is bad, but because it doesn't fit your own lifestyle. Right. So you need to know who you are. That ancient word put on Zeus there, temple, know thyself. And followed by that is to thyself be true. Or you have to first of all know yourself and to thyself be true. Be true to the person that you know. So you have to know yourself, two things that would help you not to get conned by people being swindled is know yourself and to thyself be true. Be true to who you know of yourself. Don't try to do things because every other person is doing it. The easy way to hell is to follow other people. It's called follow the followers game, which is what men do, right? Like one of our quotes we did last time, the fools just play that game, the follow every other person without knowing where they're going, why they're doing it, right? It's the easy way to hell is to follow other people. You must know yourself and to thyself be true. And that has to decide the decisions that you make, right? And and that's important if you want to build a successful life and live the extraordinary life. If you want to build wealth, if you want to you want to build wealth and live the extraordinary life. If you want to prepare for retirement like I am doing right now, I gotta know myself and to myself be true and make decisions that tally with knowing myself to myself be true. That determines my decisions, the things I do not do, right? That would help you. Otherwise you'll be making decisions because other people are making it and you think, oh, it's only a small decision. But once you make that small decision, it affects your identity and you tend to make bigger ones because you're trying to be true to this new identity, which might not necessarily be who you are. Right. So that's important. So the extent to which commitment affects self-image depends on its being, there are four things that, that determine the extent to which your commitment will go. If that commitment is active, it is public, it takes some effort to make that commitment. We tend to want to stay consistent with it, and if it is freely chosen, right? If nobody forced you to make that decision, you tend to then want to stay consistent with it, even if it looks wrong, right? So sometimes it's the mistake people make when you're trying to force people to make decisions, and if they make a decision against that forced decision freely, they tend to want to stick with it even when they have seen that they are wrong, right? That's one of the parental mistakes when we're trying to force our children, in one particular part. Just because they want to rebel against that part, it might be the right part. They just want to show their own independence. They might choose something that will hurt them, but just because they freely chose it, they want to stay with it just to prove a point, even though that part is not working for them, right? So we need to be careful that we don't drive our children to hell. We need to be like God, come and let's reason together. Put before them life, death. You make a choice, and make it easy for them to come back to us when they realize they are wrong. And we can still, not forsake them or hold them to their whole faults, but be partners in their progress with them. So four things that make commitment powerful. If you're actively involved in making that commitment, if it's a public commitment, if there's an effort, it takes something from you to make it, and if it's freely chosen, you tend to want to stay consistent with it, right? So there is a good part of it. If you want to use it to help somebody, it can also be abused. That's what a con person would do in terms of abusing it. It's going to want to make these four things work, but it will be in such a way that it will be detrimental to us. So we need to look at both, beware of both the good side and the bad side. Ralph Waldo Emerson says a foolish consistency is the goblin of the little mind, right? So we need to check our consistency every now and then and ask ourselves, is it working for me? If it's not working for me, then I need to change it. If it's working for me, then I can keep it going, and by also looking for how I can make it better, right? Don't just leave a habit or consistency, without checking it every now and then. That's what Socrates teaches us. It says that an unexamined life is not worth living. An unexamined consistency is not worth having, because it might just be on the way to hell. It looks like it's a way of life, but it might be the way of hell. We need to check our consistency every now and then to know what we need to tweak and make right so that we can get the right result from life. Right? I hope it blessed you. That's all we have for today. We'll continue. We'll come back next week and take the next two. We'll take the next two of the Art of Persuasion, and that is going to be talking about social proof and authority next week. All right, till then, God bless you. Enjoy the rest of today and enjoy the week ahead. Take good care. Bye bye.